In the middle of a heated argument, I was actually locked in my room by my own partner. Who does he think he is to treat me like this? I'm not some pawn he can control at will. But when he speaks to me in that commanding tone, I find myself unable to resist. Chapter 10 Jealousy Maximus POV. Although I haven't seen Adelina since the night of her initiation, I always find a way to stay informed about her. Enthusiasm, in these last few months since her arrival, I've become consumed by an obsession I can't control. I want to know everything where she goes, what she does, who she speaks with. Despite my firm decision to keep her from invading my life, to push her away, I find it increasingly impossible to ignore her presence. That night in the sacred place lingers in my mind, refusing to fade. It was there, under the weight of an ancient ritual, that I made the fateful choice to bind her destiny to mine. That night was one of the most difficult of my life. I wanted her so desperately that I almost surrendered to her charm. Her presence is utterly intoxicating. Every glance, every movement, every breath seems designed to unravel my self-control. When I'm around her, my instincts threaten to overpower me, pulling me toward her in a way I can't entirely resist. Somehow, I managed to reclaim my senses, to push back against the overwhelming pull, and avoided doing something foolish. But the temptation was almost too much. Leaving her alone in the clearing was my proudest decision. I knew it even as I walked away, but I had no other choice. If I had stayed a moment longer, I might have succumbed to my urges. I might have mocked her. Since that night, she has avoided me like the plague, and I hate to admit how much it stings. Her absence leaves an ache I can't rationalize, a hollow space in my chest that I'm powerless to fill. It was supposed to feel like this. I thought I could keep my distance, keep her at arm's length, but every time she's near, my resolve fractures. It's irrational, but I can't feeling a flicker of happiness knowing she seems to enjoy her new job. Even so, I can't deny that I would much prefer to have her here, within the pact, where I could watch her every move more closely. The day she came to demand the administration position, I knew there was much I could do to stop her. That idiot Alex was backing her so relentlessly that it was clear even if I refused to let her go to the hospital, she would find another job somewhere else. Her determination left me with little choice but to concede. Though I was about to let Alex forget where the lines were drawn, I made it explicitly clear to him that he was to stay away from her. And I didn't stop there. I warned him that if he crossed me or did anything stupid, there would be consequences, and he would pay dearly for it. The past few days have been nothing short of a nightmare for me. Adelina is always late, and that idiot Alex refuses to tell me anything about her. He has the nerve to brush me off with some nonsense about being extremely busy and not having spoken to her. What a load of bullshit. I know full well how close he is to her. She's doing this deliberately, just to get under my skin. Every smug word, every dismissive shrug, it's all part of his game. And it's driving me insane. The thought of him being near her, knowing things about her that I don't, sets my blood on fire. It's 8 o'clock at night, and Adelina still hasn't returned home. This is the 6th night in a row she's pulled this. Her shift at work ended hours ago, and yet there's no sign of her. I can't wrap my head around it. Where's she? What could she possibly be doing? I sit in the darkened room, tense and restless, waiting for Christopher, my beta, and my oldest friend to bring me answers. Chris and I have been through everything together, and is one of the few people I trust implicitly. Is loyal to a fault, and his honesty is something I've always respected. Chris never sugarcoats things, which is why I value his counsel more than anyone's. Aside from Gina, she is the only one in the pack who knows that Adelina is my mate. But unlike Gina, Chris doesn't agree with how I've handled things. She has made his reservations clear, and though I've considered his perspective in the past, this time, I can't. This isn't about what's logical or emotional, it's about what needs to be done. Chris lets his emotions drive him when it comes to Adelina, and I can't afford that kind of softness. Not now. A knock at the door pulls me from my thoughts. My head snaps up, and I stand, waiting for him to enter. Chris has arrived. The door creaks open, and he steps in, his face unreadable, though the slight furrow in his brow betrays his concern. "Elsa, good evening." His voice steady but tinged with unease. "Good evening, Chris," I reply, unable to keep the frustration from bleeding into my tone. I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. "All these years I've known you, and whenever you call me Alpha like that, it always means you've got something bad to tell me." His jaw tightens, and for a moment, he hesitates. That pause alone is enough to make my chest tighten with unease. Chris rarely holds back when he does. It's because he is carefully measuring his words. "This is something only you can decide, Maximus," he says finally, meeting my eyes with a steady but conflicted gaze. "I can't and I don't want to take a stand on this." I cross my arms, already irritated. "Okay. To my agent extraordinaire, Adelina, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Just tell me. "To my agent extraordinaire, Adelina, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." What's going on? He takes a deep breath before speaking. Adelina has made a lot of friends in the Pact these last couple of months. She's very sociable, and she's been quickly accepted. Everyone likes her. I can feel the impatience building in me. "Don't go around the bush, man. Just tell me what's going on." He meets my gaze and pauses for a moment, as if weighing his next words carefully. "The last few days, she's been staying up late at the hospital. She's been coming home later and later each night." "I know that. Tell me something I don't know, like the reason she's doing this." I growl, my frustration mounting. Chris doesn't flinch, his expression as serious as ever. "Her colleagues say she wants to give a good impression to her new superior," he explains. "She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone." I snap, my patience wearing thin. "Enthusiasm, I'm the one who guarantees for her. Everyone knows it, and no one dares defy me." "I know, Max," Chris replies, his voice stained with hesitation. "But she doesn't. I doubt anyone's even dared to tell her that." I exhale sharply, running a hand through my hair. This is getting out of hand. What is she doing in the hospital for all those hours? Did you manage to find out? Chris leans in slightly, his eyes narrowed as if preparing me for something. "Of course I did. But before I tell you, I want you to react calmly when you hear it." My mind races, but I try to keep my composure. "Just tell me. To my agent extraordinaire, Adelina, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Rumor has it that she spends long hours locked up in the new manager's office. Every day, they lock themselves in there 4 hours without letting anyone disturb them. My blood boils. "They do what?" I hiss, fighting to keep my voice steady. "To my agent extraordinaire, Adelina, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Enraging. How dare she? The thought of Adelina alone with this man, spending all that time with him, fills me with a mix of disbelief and fury. But I can't show it. Not yet. "Who is this new manager?" I force the words out, my tone colder than I intended. What I really want is to tear this man apart, to rip him from his position and make him pay for getting anywhere near her. But I can't let Chris or anyone else see how deeply this is affecting me. "His name's Mario Lupo," Chris answers, unfazed. "A cheers from the well-known Lupo family in Italy." The name rings in my ears like a death knell. My jaw clenches, and I force myself to keep calm, though every fiber of my being is screaming to act. "And what the hell is he doing here?" I demand, the irritation clear in my voice. "Archie is the third son of the family," Chris continues, unfazed by my rising anger. "Instead of becoming a gamma in his pack, he studied medicine, and now he oversees the management of hospital units around the world. Archie is very successful. It's an honor and a privilege to have him here. I can't contain the disgust that rises in my chest. Honor and Bush. I want him gone by tomorrow morning. I snap, my voice dripping with contempt. Chris looks at me, his expression serious but firm. You know we can't do that. Why not? I bite out, my teeth clenched. I'm the damn alpha of this pack, and the future king of all werewolves. I do whatever I want. Chris gives a short shake of his head. You aren't king, but even if you were, you can't act so recklessly. Because we can't rely on rumors to blame someone for something. And secondly, because his family is one of the strongest allies we had in Europe. We can't afford to lose them. And last but not least, he pauses, watching me closely. Why do you care about what he does with Adelina? I thought you didn't care about her. Am I right? Yes, I answer too quickly, my voice sharp. I'm trying to mask my irritation, but it's futile. My control is slipping, and the rage building inside me is impossible to ignore. I need to get away from Chris before he sees how much this is affecting me. I stand abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I've had enough. I don't need to listen to any more of this. On hearing about these two, about Adelina and her so-called colleagues or superior. Without another word, I storm out of my office, my mind a whirlwind of anger and confusion. I make my way to Adelina's room, my steps quick and forceful. I'm going to end this tonight. I reach her door, throw it open, and flick the light switch, hoping to find her there. I scan the room desperately, my heart pounding in my chest. The room is empty. My eyes scan every corner, but there's no sign of her. The emptiness gnaws at me, but as I breathe in deeply, her scent hits me. The familiar fragrance of her perfume lingers in the air, soft and intoxicating. It calms me down, just a little, grounding me in the midst of my rising frustration. I close my eyes for a moment, letting the scent settle my racing thoughts. Despite the anger still bubbling beneath the surface, there's something about her perfume, her presence that soothes me, even if only for a second. But the relief is short-lived. It doesn't change the fact that she's not here, that she's been avoiding me, and that the last thing I want is for her to be spending time with that damn Lupo. Frustration consumes me. She's not here. She's probably off with that Italian idiot, Mario Lupo, enjoying their little secret rendezvous. My blood boils at the thought. How dare she? How could she do this to me? I clench my fists, my body trembling with the urge to act, to make her realize how much she's crossed the line. I could feel my wolf pacing inside me, restless and irritated. I had to fight to control it. How is it possible for my mate to fool around with someone else? The question kept repeating in my mind like an endless echo. How can she be so disrespectful to me? I sat in the armchair, trying to calm myself down, but nothing seemed to work. I had already downed a bottle of whiskey and smoked several cigarettes, but the rage bubbling inside me kept growing, gnawing at my insides. Every minute that passed without her made it worse. Where the hell is she? An hour and a half had passed when I finally heard the familiar sound of footsteps outside the door. The scent of her intoxicating perfume reached me before she even entered. She's here. I turned off the lights, my heart racing. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. What is happening to me? Why am I so eager to see her? I composed myself, my hands steady, my face neutral as the door creaked open. The instant she stepped inside, I flipped the light switch back on. She froze in her tracks, eyes wide as she scanned the room. It was obvious I was the last person she expected to find here at this hour. I didn't waste any time. Where were you? My voice cold, my alpha tone cutting through the silence. Good evening to you two. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She replied, her voice dripping with sass. I didn't miss the way she tried to mask her surprise. I narrowed my eyes, the tension in the room thickening. Why are you late every night? Her expression was unreadable as she shrugged nonchalantly. I'm sorry. I didn't know there was a specific time to return. she retorted, her tone challenging. I felt my control slipping. She thinks she can talk to me like that. I stood up from the chair, my voice hard and commanding. I asked you a question, and I demand an answer. Don't play dumb with me. The air between us grew heavier, the silence palpable. I wasn't about to let her dismiss this any longer. Not when I was already at my breaking point. Alpha, don't you have anything more important to do tonight? She shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Instead of bothering with someone like me, why don't you focus on your girlfriend? Her words stung more than I wanted to admit, but I quickly recovered, my tone sharp. My personal life is not of your business. I scolded her, my patience wearing thin. She didn't flinch. Neither is mine to you. So I would appreciate it if you left my room right away. I have to take a bath and get changed, and I am already late, she said with an air of defiance. Late for what? The question burned inside me. I couldn't understand why she was still pushing me like this, especially after everything that had happened. Late for what? Don't tell me you're eating again, I asked incredulously, my voice dimmed with frustration. I've told you. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That's none of your business, she replied with a cold finality, her eyes not backing down. I took a step forward, my anger flaring up once more. Do not push it, Adelina, I warned, my voice low and dangerous. My wolf stared, sensing the shift in my mood. I was on the edge, and I knew I needed to rein it in before I lost control. I had to admit, this girl had guts. No one, except for a few, dared to talk to me like that. She spoke to me so freely, without fear or hesitation, as if she didn't have a care in the world about the consequences. It was both infuriating and oddly fascinating. Was she this bold because of who she was? Or was it because we were mates? I couldn't tell anymore. When I first met her, she couldn't even form a complete sentence in front of me. And now, look at her standing here, challenging me. She had evolved, and I couldn't make sense of it. How did she gain so much confidence in such a short amount of time? She stared me down, her defiance written all over her face. It is I that I push it. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. What's your problem? She shot back, her voice raw with frustration. I couldn't let it go. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Answer to my damn question, I demanded in my alpha tone, my patience thinning. But she didn't back down. She rolled her eyes and said, You know what? Do me a favor and go. Her words were laced with defeat, but there was a flicker of something else. Was it anger? Or was she just exhausted? I stayed where I was, sitting in my armchair, anger building within me, unable to look away from her. I said, Leave. She yelled, her voice sharp. I stood up slowly, unable to leave until I got the answers I wanted. My control was fraying at the edges, but I forced myself to hold it together. I will not leave until you tell me where you have been and where you are going so late at this hour, I said firmly. Her eyes narrowed, and the fire in them only grew. How dare you come here and ask for explanations when you've been fooling around all this time? She demanded, the words leaving her mouth like a slap. You kicked me out of your life, your mind, and your heart. You never let me in. You revealed to me that we are mates only to bring me here and tell me to forget about it. And after months of getting a cold shoulder from you, now you come here and ask for answers. Answers for what? Why am I obliged to inform you about what I do or where I go or who I meet? Why? She yelled, the anger in her voice vibrating through the air. Caught off guard by the force of her words, I hadn't expected her to get this angry. I thought she might cower or ask for my forgiveness. But this was something different. She wasn't afraid of me, not anymore. I stayed silent, just watching her, as her words continued to pierce through me. She wasn't holding back, and for some reason, It only made me more confused. I couldn't tell if I was angry with her or frustrated with myself. Maybe both. She sighed heavily, her body tense as she continued. You want me out of your life, don't you? So why are you still keeping me here? You were very clear when you said you didn't want anything from me. So why don't you stay in your own decision? It is your own damn decision after all. It was as if she didn't understand. As if she couldn't see what I was trying to protect. But she didn't get it. Not yet. She yelled at me again. And I felt every word cut through me. My mouth went dry. And my throat tightened. I couldn't say anything. I just stood there, fuming but also unwilling to lash out at her. My wolf growled at me from within, urging me to stop holding back, to do something, anything, but I held my ground, my body tense with restraint. But that didn't mean I was torn inside. I was so angry, and the way she spoke to me, the way she acted like she didn't care, it unsettled me. It made me feel powerless. Don't you have anything to tell me? Her frustration evident. I took a few moments to calm my nerves before responding in a controlled, stern tone. In waiting for answer, and my patience is running thin, I replied coldly. Oh, you want an answer? He'll give you one. One I should have given you a long time ago. Then she did something I never expected from her. Her words echoed in the room, each syllable digging into me deeper. I, Adelina MacArthur, daughter of Richard MacArthur, Alpha of the Crescent Moon Pack, reject you, Maximus. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Every word she spoke felt like a slap to my face. And my wolf snarled inside me. To my agent extraordinaire, Marion Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. This was not how things worked. I was the Alpha. I made the rules. No one, especially not my mate, could speak like this to me. She was rejecting me. I could feel my heart race, my blood boiling. How dare she? How dare she do this to me? I had never been so enraged in my life. The audacity, the disrespect. My mind screamed at me to do something, to stop her. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping across the floor. I couldn't let her finish. I was going to let her reject me like this. Not when it worked so hard to bring her here, to keep her close. She didn't get to throw all of that away with one simple phrase. She didn't have that right. I moved toward her in a blur, my body acting before my mind could catch up. My hands gripped her shoulders tightly, pulling her closer to me. My eyes locked onto hers, and I could see the defiance there. She was still trying to reject me, still trying to break the bond between us. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Don't you dare. I growled, my voice low and dangerous. You can't reject me. Do you understand? I am the Alpha. I decide who stays and who goes. You don't get to make that decision. Not now. Not ever. Her breath hitched in her throat. But she didn't pull away. Her eyes flickered with something fear. Or was it determination? I couldn't tell. I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was that she understood who was in control. You think you can just walk away from me? I continued, my voice more forceful. You're mine, Adelina. And nothing is going to change that. Her lips parted, as if she was about to say something. But I didn't let her speak. I couldn't. My rage had taken over, and I was going to allow her to finish what she started. I was going to let her reject me, not when I could feel the bond between us so strongly. She was staring at me, eyes wide with fear. And for a moment, something shifted in my chest. I didn't want her to be afraid of me, not like this. But I couldn't let go. Not when she was about to make the worst mistake of her life. I was angry. But underneath the fury, there was fear too. Fear that she would leave me. Fear that she might actually reject me, us. Fear that the bond we shared, one that had tried so hard to ignore, might be severed forever. I pulled her closer, keeping our eyes locked, and my alpha tone came out before I could stop it. Never dare to do this again. You cannot reject me. You cannot leave me. You will never go away from me. Do you understand? I wasn't asking, I was demanding. She needed to hear it. to understand the gravity of what she was saying. I saw the defiance in her eyes. But that wouldn't save her. You will stay. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Me forever. The words coming from a place I didn't even recognize. The finality in my voice left no room for argument. We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms. The warmth of her body against mine made my desire for her grow stronger. I longed to hold her tighter, to kiss her endlessly until we both lost ourselves in the moment. Her scent was intoxicating, overwhelmingly. I couldn't fight it any longer. I wanted her more than anything, but I couldn't let my feelings take control. As an alpha, I had to maintain my composure, show strength, and keep my emotions in check. I pulled away from her suddenly and walked toward the door, forcing myself to leave. As I stormed out of the room, the door slammed behind me, the sound echoing in the silence. But there was something else. I had locked her in. I knew it was extreme, but I couldn't just let her walk away. Not like this. I needed time to make her understand. Time to make her realize she was mine, that there was no escaping this bond we shared. And maybe, just maybe, she had come to see that. But for now, I had to leave her there, alone, to think, to feel what I had felt, to experience the pain of knowing she couldn't walk away, not from me. Chapter 11. Moving on. Adelina SBOV. I couldn't believe what had just happened a few minutes ago. Maximus was furious over my imminent rejection and had the audacity to lock me in my own room like some damn criminal. He treats me like he owns me, like I'm nothing more than an object to him. The way he acts, as if I have no say in my own life, is infuriating. Everything became painfully clear to me tonight. He was nothing more than an arrogant, selfish man, indifferent to others, especially to me. He hadn't brought me here to build a genuine relationship, to be true mates, no. HUD brought me here because it was convenient for him. He wanted me close, so his wolf could wield ultimate power, solidifying his claim to the throne and defeating any enemies in the way. How could I have been so blind, believing he would act differently? I had heard the rumors about him. I knew deep down who he really was, yet I had followed him like a naive schoolgirl. I shouldn't have ever held any hope for him. He was done. Tonight, I realized I needed to move on with my life. Waiting for him was pointless. All it did was keep me stagnant, with no future to look forward to. Alex had called me several times that evening, but I tried to avoid him. What could I possibly tell him? That I was locked in my own room, punished like a schoolgirl. But he insisted so much that I finally answered. When he heard my sobs, he immediately got angry and wanted to come comfort me. I told him I was fine, that I needed to be alone. He respected my wishes, but made me promise to meet him early the next morning before work at the usual cafe. Thank the goddess for sending me such a good friend. His care for me melted my heart and gave me the strength I needed to face this difficult situation. All night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, trying to accept the situation I was in and thinking of ways to escape it. I finally managed to drift off just before morning, only to be awoken by the blaring sound of the alarm clock. Reluctantly, I got out of bed and went through my usual routine. When I was finally ready, I headed to Toza, a small CAF near the hospital. I avoided the Pax restaurant, not wanting to run into Maximus, and also because I figured Alex would probably be waiting for me at the CAF. As I waited for my order, I felt a light touch on my back. Turning around in surprise, I found Mario Lupo, the hospital manager, smiling at me. This was the first time Mario had ever been so discreet and friendly with me. He had always been polite and professional, but today was different. After a brief exchange, he paid for my coffee and suggested we sit at one of the tables. Since Alex was running late, I agreed to join him. We sat in silence for a few minutes before Mario broke it. So, Adelina, how are you? How are things going here? Are you satisfied with your work? I am very satisfied, I replied, genuinely excited. I think this new administration model will be a success. I was just flattering him. I honestly believed in his approach and supported his vision. Please, Adelina, do me a favor, if I can. So stop calling me sir. It's Mario when we're alone. I want my partners to speak to me freely, without all the formalities. I promise I'll try. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Smiling awkwardly. So you're satisfied? I'm glad to hear that. Your opinion means a lot to me. I really hope to make this hospital a model for functionality and impeccable service. I nodded in agreement. We shared the same vision. How about your life in the pack? Have you managed to blend in? He asked after a few minutes of silence. I'm doing okay. I've made some progress. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I still miss my old pack, my home, my family, and friends, but I've managed. These past few months, I've met some new people. As for you, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. How are you handling everything? I heard you're from Italy. It really doesn't matter to me anymore. He replied. I've been through so many packs in my career that I've lost count. I'm familiar with the culture of most packs around the world, every alpha, every law, every tradition. It's fascinating, but also tiresome. And to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Frustrating. Honestly, I'm a bit jealous of you. I admitted with a sigh. You've traveled to so many places. Meanwhile, I'm 22 and have never left my pack, except for the 2 months I've spent here. I've always wanted to see the world, meet new people, experience different cultures. There's plenty of time for that, he said with a reassuring smile. Nothing's stopping you. I nodded slowly, but there was a hint of sadness in my voice as I murmured. I guess. Why the long face? Mario asked, his tone softening. Is something holding you back? It's never too late for anything. I took a deep breath, one I didn't even realize I was holding. Gathering all the courage I could muster, I looked him in the eye and said, I don't think it's that simple. There are things holding me back. Responsibilities, expectations, especially back home. And there's the pack too. My role in it. My obligations. I hesitated for a moment, then added, it's not as easy as just leaving. He looked at me thoughtfully for a moment, his expression softening. I understand, but you deserve to live your own life. Adelina, don't let anyone or anything hold you back from what you truly want. Reassuringly, but there was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite place. I forced a smile in return, but inside, I couldn't help but wonder if I was truly ready to leave it all behind. The pack, Maximus, everything. Could I really start fresh? Or was I too tied to the life I'd known? Just as we were about to leave, Mario suddenly grabbed my arm, gently but firmly, and turned me to face him. I want you to know that I am here whenever you need someone to talk to. Don't hesitate at all. His voice sincere and compassionate. Thank you, I replied, completely taken by surprise by his words. After 9 hours of work in hospital, I finally called it a day and headed to the gym. I wanted to decompress from the stress and anxiety of work. Marissa could not come with me today because she had a romantic appointment. I hope it goes well for her. At least one of us is lucky in her love affairs. I did not get my car. I preferred to walk as I managed to clear my head of the thoughts that haunted me. When I entered the gym, I went straight to the locker room and put on my black leggings and my black sports bra that I had in my bag. In the gym, there were a lot of people training, including the warriors. I started with a few stretching exercises and continued with a little cardio and a little running. Then I headed to the boxing bag to throw some punches. This is my favorite part of the exercise. I love to give a few punches, It always helps me decompress. With my perimeter vision, I saw someone shouting at my side. A man in his mid-40s was approaching me. He was very tall and his body was well built. He had brown hair with a little grey on his temples, black eyes and some wrinkles on his face. I looked around and realized I was there alone. He came closer to me. "Hey, you there? What's your name?" His voice rough and commanding. "Are you talking to me?" Somewhat taken aback. "Yes, you. Do you see anyone else around?" He replied sarcastically. "I guess not," I answered, trying to keep my composure. "My name is Adelina. How can I help you, Saro? You're the girl that the Alpha brought a few months ago. In Demetrio, the gamma of this pack. I've been watching you, and I gotta say, you're pretty good. Have you had any training before?" "Thank you," I replied, a bit uncomfortable with the attention. "To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." I've trained. I was working out every day in my old pack. I still do, I see. Would you like to do some training here as well? As you probably know, I'm responsible for training the warriors. I also help anyone in the pack who wants to learn how to defend themselves. You interested in that? That would be interesting. When can I join? Feeling intrigued, Demetrio's expressions softened slightly as he observed me, seeming to weigh my response. "Well, we usually have a group training session every Monday and Wednesday evening. But if you're eager to get started sooner, I can arrange a one-on-one session for tomorrow. We can get right into some basic moves and you'll see what you've got." I nodded, feeling a flicker of excitement. It had been a while since I'd trained in a proper setting. The few sessions I'd done here and there hadn't quite been enough to keep my skills sharp. This could be a good opportunity to get back into form, and Phoebe even proved Demetrio wrong about my fighting abilities. I'd appreciate that. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Meeting his eyes. "Tomorrow it is." His lips twitched, as if he was pleased by my eagerness. "Good. I'll meet you here tomorrow at 6 p.m. Main the training room. Be prepared to sweat." I gave him a small grin. "I'm always prepared for that." Demetrio chuckled, a sound that echoed in the open space of the gym. "I like your attitude. See you then, Adelina." As he turned to walk away, I felt a surge of energy. Training was exactly what I needed right now. A way to channel the frustration and confusion from the past days into something productive. And perhaps, if I trained hard enough, I could prove to myself, if not to Demetrio, that I was capable of defending what mattered to me. Chapter 12, Training Adelina's POV. "Follow me," Demetrio said, motioning toward the training field. The field stretched out before us, the size of a football stadium. At the center, there was a large area marked with painted circles on the ground where two-man battles were held. A long table was covered with a wide array of weapons, ranging from medieval to modern. There were knives. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That's guns loaded with silver bullets, machine guns, revolvers. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And more, everything a warrior might need for combat. Around the edges of field, several warriors were training. Demetrio walked over to them and ordered them to stop, his commanding voice making them fall into line immediately. He turned to one of them, a man I recognized as Gregory, a very tall, muscular figure who stepped forward when his name was called. Demetrio gave a brief, nodding greeting. "This is Gregory." Then turned to us. "You will fight him." The atmosphere shifted instantly, and the warriors stood still, watching as Demetrio began to explain the rules of the training exercise. You will fight in 3 rounds, Demetrio continued, his tone firm. The total time will be seconds. The first 20 seconds. You will fight in your human form, using only your body for the first 10 seconds. Enthusiasm, in the next 10. You may use any weapon you choose from that table. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You will shift to your wolf form for the last 10 seconds, but you are not allowed to shift until I give the command. I nodded, feeling a rush of adrenaline. I had trained in various forms before, but this would be different. Demetrio's rules were clear and straightforward. My heart raced as he turned to me, waiting for the signal. Begin. And the command made my muscles tense with readiness. I faced Gregory, my gaze steady as I prepared myself to engage in the first round of this test. We began to move around the perimeter of the battle circle, each of us carefully sizing up the other. I was going to be the first to strike. I needed to get a feel for Gregory's moves. My canines began to elongate, and my nails sharpened, ready for whatever he would throw at me. We circled each other for a few seconds, neither making a move until he attacked first, throwing punches from all directions. I blocked and dodged his strikes, my body fluid and focused, repelling his blows with ease. It seemed like we were evenly matched, but then I saw my opportunity. He threw a wide punch, leaving his left leg exposed. I took advantage of it, landing a strong punch that swept him off balance, sending him crashing to the ground. He scrambled to his feet, clearly caught off guard and angry. The intensity in his eyes was evident as he launched himself at me once more. This time, his strikes came faster and harder. His blows were relentless, and I dodged some. One punch hit me in the side, knocking the wind out of me and throwing me to the ground. Before I could recover, he aimed the kick at me. I quickly rolled away and pushed myself back to my feet. We locked eyes again as he charged at me, throwing more punches. I blocked, dodged, and waited for my opening. When I saw it, I countered, letting my strength surge through me. I kicked him in the stomach and followed up with punches to his chest and face. The force of my blows seemed to catch him off guard, and with one powerful kick, I landed a strike that knocked the wind out of him where it hurts most. He crumpled to the floor, but I was done. I took the chance to kick and punch him some more, pushing him back as he struggled to defend himself. His attempts to block became slower, more desperate. Finally, he managed to stand up again, and the fight resumed. He threw another series of punches, but I dodged most of them and landed a few solid blows in return. We locked arms, each trying to overpower the other. Just as I was about to land another blow, Demetrio's voice rang out, commanding us to stop. Enough. Pulling us apart. The intense focus and adrenaline melted away, leaving me breathless and with a feeling of satisfaction. Gregory and I both stood there, panting, as Demetrio sized us up with a critical eye. Second round. Choose your weapons, Demetrio announced, his voice firm. I followed him to the table, where a variety of weapons were laid out. Without hesitation, I picked up a sword, its weight feeling comfortable in my grip. Gregory chose an axe, a bulky weapon that would require considerable strength to wield effectively. The tension between us was palpable as we squared off, both of us waiting for the other to make the first move. Gregory didn't wait long. With a swift motion, he swung the axe toward me. I blocked most of his strikes, though a few hit and left cuts on my arms and torso. The pain was sharp, but nothing I couldn't handle. I knew my wolf would take care of the healing once the fight was over. As the battle raged on, I focused on staying one step ahead of him. Using my sword, I carved a deep gash across his face, drawing a pain drawl from him. I followed up with strikes to his sides and abdomen, leaving him staggering and trying to regain his balance. This was my opening. With a burst of speed, I pressed my advantage, landing blow after blow. His knees buckled, and he conceded, holding up his hands in surrender. Before I could catch my breath, Demetrio's commanding voice echoed through the field. Third round. I didn't hesitate an instant. I put down my sword and shifted into my white wolf, my fur gleaming in the fading light. Gregory quickly followed suit, shifting into a massive brown wolf with grey spots. His wolf was much larger than mine, but I had speed and agility on my side. The moment the shift was complete, he lunged at me with powerful jaws, trying to sink his teeth into my sides. I dodged, twisting my body just in time to avoid his bite. His strength was undeniable, but I used my speed to wear him down. He lunged again, this time trying to catch my legs, but I was too quick. I weaved around him, my movements fluid and calculated. We danced around each other for nearly 10 minutes, each of us trying to land the decisive blow. He made a mistake. In a desperate move, he jumped toward me, but I was ready. I dodged, rolling under his body and coming up behind him. With all the strength I had, I launched myself forward, sinking my teeth into his already wounded abdomen. Gregory howled in pain, but I didn't stop. I bit and clawed at his sides, forcing him onto the ground. As he tried to recover, I quickly maneuvered around and latched onto his neck, my teeth piercing his fur. It wasn't long before he finally gave up, submitting to me. Demetrio called the fight. The warriors around us erupted into applause, cheering for me. I stood tall, bowing my head in acknowledgement, my chest swelling with pride. But then, something unexpected happened. The cheering warriors suddenly stopped, their heads all bowing at once. Confusion washing over me. Wolves usually bowed in the presence of high-ranking members or alphas, but I hadn't expected them to show such respect to me. I wondered why they were doing this. And then I felt it, the unmistakable scent of my mate. It hit me like a wave, rich and intoxicating, cinnamon, pine, and lemon. My heart skipped a beat as I turned, and there he was, Maximus. He stood across the field, arms crossed, a look of arrogance and dominance on his face. His aura was undeniable, a presence that commanded attention and respect. His eyes locked onto mine, and a growl rumbled from his chest, loud and unmistakable. His voice full of authority, shaking the air around us. I stood frozen, my heart racing. Who had just been cheering for me, instantly stopped and lowered their heads in submission, a clear sign of Maximus's power and influence. He stepped forward, his eyes never leaving mine, the weight of his presence almost overwhelming. What the hell is going on here? Maximus's voice boomed, making every inch of the training field feel suffocating. His anger was palpable, and the warriors who had just bowed to me seemed to shrink back, understanding what was about to unfold. Demetrio bowed low to Maximus, his posture showing respect, though there was an undertone of unease. "Good evening. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Just ordinary training as always, so we're glad you came to watch us. Would you like us to make a demonstration for you?" Maximus's glare intensified, his gaze burning with fury. He didn't say anything for a moment, the silence hanging heavy between us. Then, without warning, he turned to the gathered warriors. "You are all dismissed. Go get some rest." His voice cold and commanding, the warriors quickly scattered, heading to the exits without a second glance at him or Demetrio. Maximus's gaze never wavered from me as he spoke, his voice low and commanding. "Stay." The word lingered in the air, heavy and unyielding. I wanted to protest, to walk away, but I couldn't bring myself to move. His presence was suffocating, like an invisible force keeping me rooted to the spot. The last of the warriors filtered out of the training field, leaving only the three of us. Maximus's aura seemed to fill the space, making everything feel too close, too tight. My heart raced as I stood there, waiting for what would come next. Demetrio, ever the professional, kept his expression neutral, though I could sense the tension between him and Maximus growing. Maximus finally turned his attention to Demetrio, his expression dark, eyes narrowed. What is she doing here? Gamma. His voice was clipped, each word dripping with authority and something darker that I couldn't quite place. Demetrio hesitated for only a second, but I could see the subtle shift in his demeanor as he prepared to answer. Just my new trainee. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. She's very good. I was planning to make her my second in command of the warriors. Her skills and techniques are exceptional. She even bested Gregory in the last round. Demetrio's voice was steady, but there was a hint of tension in his words, a sense that he knew how this conversation was about to go. Maximus didn't respond immediately, his gaze still fixed on Demetrio. The silence between them was thick with unspoken thoughts. Then, with a barely audible growl, he finally spoke. She's not a warrior. She's not meant to be part of that team. His words hit me like a slap, and I felt a wave of frustration and anger rush through me. But I said nothing, keeping my eyes on the ground. I could feel Demetrio's discomfort, but also his determination to stand his ground. With all due respect, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. This is where you're wrong, Demetrio replied, his tone firm and unwavering. She's a warrior. She's already proven herself. This is something you should have discussed with me first. Don't you think, Gamma? Maximus said, his tone commanding. With all due respect, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. It didn't cross my mind, Demetrio replied firmly. Promoting trainees to higher levels is one of my responsibilities. What I've always done without seeking your permission. You've never challenged my decisions, so it's changed now. Do you doubt my abilities? No, I don't. But I also do not want this woman in the Warriors team. Maximus responded, his voice calm but strict. Honestly, I don't see why not. According to Pact law, she's free to participate. It's her right to learn how to defend herself for fight. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Demetrio turned to me and asked, do you still want to train with us? Adelina, of course, I want to. I'm thrilled with the idea, I answered eagerly. Dime trio. You're dismissed, Maximus said, his expression blank. Alpha, Demetrio bowed, his tone respectful, but his eyes gleaming with something that bordered on amusement. He looked at me and added, I'll wait for you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Don't be late. He winked, and with a final good night, he left us alone. Maximus's eyes locked onto me, his gaze fiery and penetrating. He took a deliberate step forward, his presence suffocating. You think you can just walk in here and prove yourself with a few punches? Adelina, his voice dripped with mockery and irritation. You're not one of them. You don't belong in the arena. Each word felt like a weight pressing down on me, a dismissal of everything I had worked so hard for. My fists tightened at my sides, but I kept my expression neutral, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing my anger. I was going to back down. I belong wherever I choose to be. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. My voice unwavering, though my pulse quickened. Maximus smirked, amusement flickering in his cold gaze. He didn't respond immediately, but the tension between us was palpable, a storm just waiting to break. Follow me to the office now, Maximus ordered, his voice harsh, the frustration radiating from him. He was practically seething with anger. I trailed behind him as we headed to his office, feeling the weight of his fury in the air. For the first time since arriving here, I wasn't intimidated by his reaction. Maybe it was the adrenaline from the fight still rushing through me. Or maybe I have finally trained myself not to let his presence unsettle me. We reached the office, and Maximus opened the door. stepping inside and waiting for me to follow. As I entered, he locked the door behind us and took the key. The sound of the lock clicking echoed in the quiet room, and suddenly, the confidence I had felt moments ago started to waver. Perhaps I shouldn't have been so sure of myself after all. Chapter 13 Surrender to him. Adelina SBOV, Maximus stood by his desk. His body tense with barely contained rage. He didn't speak at first. His eyes fixed on me, scanning every detail. The silence between us was heavy, suffocating. The seconds ticked by slowly, each one amplifying the tension. I stood there, trying to keep my composure. But inside, I was bracing myself for what would come next. He had made it clear earlier that he didn't want me in the Warriors team, and I could feel that he was on the edge now. The last thing I wanted was to provoke him further, but something in me refused to back down completely. Do you understand what you've done? Maximus's voice broke the silence, low and threatening. I held his gaze, steady, and just doing what I think is right. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Trying to keep my voice even. I want to be useful. I want to be better, and that means training. Maximus narrowed his eyes, his jaw tightening as fury simmered beneath the surface. Training, huh? His voice dropped lower, laced with accusation. You think I'm stupid, that I don't see exactly what you're doing. And what's that? I shot back derisively, crossing my arms, my tone daring him to continue, provoking other men. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Taking a step closer, his presence towering. You used training as an excuse to lure them in. I won't allow it. I won't stand by while you flirt with others right in front of me. His voice was sharp, each word slicing through the space between them. My expression hardened, my chin tilting up defiantly. Is that what you think I'm doing? I asked coldly, my voice dripping with disbelief. In training, Maximus. You know training, the thing you supposedly care so much about. Or is it only acceptable when it's invisible to everyone else? You think you can just walk into my pack and disrupt everything? I swallowed hard, trying to suppress the frustration bubbling inside me. In not trying to disrupt anything. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My voice now rising slightly. In trying to prove that I can contribute. I don't need you to make decisions for me. His eyes flashed with fury. And for a brief moment, I wondered if I had said too much. But before he could react, I continued. You can't control everything. Maximus, you don't control me, I said firmly, my voice steady even as my heart pounded. You can't just lock me up in a room for the rest of my life. I held his gaze, refusing to back down. Maximus's expression darkened, his jaw tightening like a storm about to break. For a moment, I thought he might lash out, the tension in the room nearly suffocating. But then, just as quickly, something shifted. His features softened, and the anger in his eyes gave way to an unreadable intensity. He exhaled slowly, dragging a hand through his hair in a frustrated motion. You really have a lot of nerve. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. His voice low and biting. You think you can challenge me after everything you've seen, after everything I've done. I felt my heartbeat quicken, but I refused to flinch. I'm not challenging you, Maximus. I'm just living my life. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm asking for respect. There was a long pause, the air between us charged with an intensity that was almost suffocating. The silence stretched, thickened and yielding, until Maximus finally spoke again. This time, his voice was more measured, but no less demanding. What's your plan? He asked incredulously, his eyes boring into mine. My plan, I repeated, confusion flickering across my face. Yes, Your plan, your real purpose, the reason behind all this. What are you trying to achieve? His tone was sharp, probing, as if he were trying to peel back my layers to find the truth hidden beneath. My plan. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I echoed, still baffled by the accusation. I don't have a plan. Maximus. I just live my life. I do what I do because it makes me feel good. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And productive. So don't worry, I'm not scheming. And I have no hidden agenda. My only goal is to live the best life I can, even if I'm stuck here under these awful conditions. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My voice steady but tinged with exasperation. His eyes narrowing as he leaned in slightly. Don't take me for a fool, he said coldly. I know your plan. You're after the position of Luna of the Pack. What? Stunned by his words. That's preposterous. My voice rose as disbelief turned to frustration. What are you talking about? In not pursuing anything. And I definitely don't want to be Luna. Ivy never wanted that. He shook his head, his expression hard and unyielding. I don't believe you. You know what? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I shot back, my voice firm and unwavering. That's not my problem. I'm not obligated to explain my life to you. I don't have to prove anything to you or anyone else. And I'm definitely not sitting here to listen to any more of your baseless accusations. He stood there, silent for a moment. Clearly, he had doubts about my answer and was wondering if I was telling him the truth or not. I could feel his unease. It was obvious that he was conflicted and didn't know how to react. After a few seconds of silence, while still locking eyes with me, he cleared his throat and spoke sternly. To summarize, I inform you that I forbid you to train with the Warriors team, and this is my final decision. You can excuse yourself now. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You what? I snapped, my voice rising. How dare you? Who gives you the right to forbid me anything? I could feel the heat rising inside me, my temper threatening to break free. I wouldn't let him control my life. He had hurt me too much already. His audacity, to think he could did what I couldn't couldn't do, was infuriating. I am your alpha. Your life belongs to me. Do not forget it. Ever. His voice hard and final. I took a deep breath, trying to control the surge of frustration and anger threatening to spill over. I refused to let him see me break. I stood tall, keeping my gaze locked on his, the anger simmering beneath the surface. For a moment, I stared at him, my jaw clenched. Then, with as much composure as I could muster, you are the alpha, but you are not above the law. The law clearly states that every pack member has the right to learn how to fight and defend themselves. Any pack member except you, he retorted, his tone final. Why accept me? What's your problem with me? I demanded, my voice sharp. I don't have a problem. It's nothing personal. It's just my decision as your alpha. This is it, he answered arrogantly, his gaze unyielding. That's not even a reason. I shot back, my voice rising in frustration. You owe me an explanation. I owe you nothing, he said coldly, his expression unreadable. You know what? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Milburn. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Taking a step toward the door. Neither do I. I'm not here to ask for your permission. I don't even need it. They'll train with the team whether you like it or not. I turned on my heel, ready to walk out. But his voice stopped me. I don't like your tone. Why do you always make things more difficult? He said firmly, his frustration evident. Maximus didn't move, his eyes fixed on mine, a storm of emotion swirling in their depths. He didn't say a word, but his presence seemed to fill the room, making it feel smaller, more suffocating. He could see the struggle in my eyes, the way I was holding on to my last bit of composure. It almost seemed as though he was waiting for something, daring me to make a move. I stood there, my fingers still gripping the lock, trying to control the rapid beating of my heart. "You're not going anywhere," he finally said, his voice low and commanding. Before I could react, his hand shot out, gripping my arm tightly and pulling me toward him. The sudden movement took me by surprise, and I stumbled slightly. Our bodies collided, and for a brief, dangerous moment, I could feel the heat radiating off him. His grip on my arm tightened, and I felt trapped, caught between the urge to fight and the instinct to push him away. His breath was warm against my ear, his voice a low whisper. "You think you can just walk away from this? From me? Not so easily." I tried to step back, to free myself, but his hold was unrelenting. "Let me go," I said through gritted teeth, my frustration mounting. But Maximus didn't relent. He leaned in closer, his presence suffocating. "Not until we resolve this." The tension in the room thickened, and all I could think was that I needed to get out of there. I was going to let him control me, not again. I gathered my strength, trying to pull away, but he held me firmly in place. I looked up into his eyes, frustration burning inside me. What was he trying to prove by keeping me here like this? I fought against the urge to lash out, to make him regret the thinking he could control me. But deep down, I knew that was the way I wanted to handle this. "Let go, Maximus," I said one last time, this time with a calmness I didn't even know I possessed. "I'm not going to fight you, but I am not staying here either." He looked down at me for a moment, as if considering my words. Finally, with a slow exhale, he released my arm, though his eyes never left mine. "You'll get what you want." His voice still tinged with authority. "But remember, nothing's ever that simple with me." I turned away, my heart still racing, determined not to let him get under my skin. But as I made my way to the door, I couldn't escape the magnetism that pulled at me from behind. "Do you mind?" My voice steady but laced with frustration. Without warning, he grabbed my arm, spinning me around to face him. His grip was firm, unyielding. Our bodies collided, and the heat between us was unmistakable, an electrifying tension, almost suffocating in its intensity. His face loomed close as he tilted his head, his breath warm against my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. "Yes, I do." His voice low, but sharp with intent. I tried to focus on the door, to ignore the words, to push through the storm of emotions crashing inside me. "Please, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Open the door. I just want to leave," I pleaded, my voice strained, desperate. He didn't move. His stance was solid as a mountain, unshakable, as if he were the immovable force and I was just the storm trying to break him. The air was thick with tension, my hands balled into fists, swinging at his chest. But before I could make contact, his hand shot up, effortlessly grabbing mine and pinning them above my head. His strength was overwhelming, his proximity unnerving. His face was inches from mine now, his eyes burning with a quiet intensity that made my heart beat faster. His breath brushed my skin, a whisper against the tension between us. "You think you can just push me away, Adelina?" His voice was soft, but there was something else beneath it, something raw and vulnerable that I hadn't expected. I swallowed hard, my mind spinning, trying to maintain my composure. "I just want to be free. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." My words coming out stronger than I'd expected. To make my own decisions, not to be a pawn in some game. The truth slipped out before I could stop it, and though my voice was firm, My heart hammered with uncertainty. What exactly was I challenging? Maximus's lips twitched, something between a smile and a challenge. He pulled back slightly, his grip still firm on my wrists. But there was a flicker in his eyes, something that made me pause, unsure of what I was seeing. "In not trying to control you, Adelina," he murmured, his voice almost pained, "but you push me in ways no one else does. You make me want to break every rule I've set for myself." His words hit me like a physical blow. There was a vulnerability in his tone, a rawness that I hadn't expected. It made the walls I'd built around myself feel fragile, thin. I had never considered him in this light. But now, as I stood there, unable to ignore the pull between us, it was impossible to deny that something deep and complicated was growing between us. "Why do you do this to me?" I whispered, my voice trembling, the words slipping out before I could catch them. It was just about the training, it was about everything, the dominance, the arrogance, the way he seemed to tear down every wall I built around myself. He didn't answer immediately. His gaze flickered from my eyes to my lips and back again. His expression clouded with a storm I couldn't quite read. "Because I don't know how not to," he finally muttered, his voice laced with frustration. It was an admission, raw and unspoken, but one he wasn't yet willing to fully acknowledge. He stepped back slightly, his hands still hovering near me, unsure whether to pull away or to touch. I felt the familiar urge to retreat, to rebuild my defenses, but my heart betrayed me. I was drawn to him, pulled into this complex, dangerous connection between us, a bond neither of us could explain, nor deny. "Maximus," I whispered his name, the air thick with unspoken words. Emotions tangled in my chest. He reached up, his hand sliding behind my neck, pulling me closer, as if afraid I might slip away. And when our lips finally met, the world seemed to fall away.